Hello and welcome back. If you're a new listener, then welcome. My name is Megan and I've been a practicing witch since the early 2000s. If you're back for another episode, then welcome back. Come sit for a spell and join me around the cauldron to talk about witchcraft, paganism, and all things magic and mundane. This month's episode was inspired by a video by Nat the Horse Witch on YouTube, where she spoke about witchcraft and the associated costs. So today, I'm going to share why I think you don't need to spend money to practice witchcraft. So grab some coffee, pull up a seat, and let's chat. All right, so hello. Let's just jump right into it. First, I want to say thank you to Nat for posting her video and for sharing her thoughts. She is a beginner. It's nice to hear from someone who hasn't been a witch for very long, especially as someone whose main audience tends to be more beginner-leaning witches. Or that's just what I assume based on the questions and messages that I get. Anyway, for those who don't know, Nat is a beginner witch, and she's documenting her journey on YouTube. In the video I watched, she spoke about the advice that people give to new witches, that witchcraft doesn't cost money, and that you don't need to buy anything to practice witchcraft. She says that creators who tell people that they don't need to spend money to practice witchcraft, if you haven't learned how to utilize tools or manipulate energy, that they've basically broken down witchcraft into the law of attraction. She goes on to say that you can practice witchcraft cheaply with bay leaves from the grocery store, candles from the dollar store, etc., and that you need these tools as you're starting out and developing your craft. Nat goes into a lot more detail on the subject, including an issue she has with anti-consumerism information coming from people who benefit from consumerism. So if you're interested in what she has to say, definitely go watch her video. I have left a link for that in the show notes and the description. So, first, I understand where Nat's coming from. I think a lot of it has to do with what we see from creators online who are sharing their practices and giving advice. It can be hard to hear someone tell us that we don't need to have all these tools and fancy objects while they themselves have or sell those things. And honestly, it's kind of why I want to create more quote-unquote real-life content on the internet, because yes, I am a witchy creator, but I actually have very little tools at my disposal, nor do I really use them all that often. Anyway, I want to talk about the point she made about witchcraft being broken down into the law of attraction. I think these are two separate issues that are getting combined with the perspective that Nat has that leads to the conclusion of law of attraction rather than witchcraft, so I want to break them apart. First is the statement that you don't need to buy anything or have any tools to practice witchcraft. The second is the assumption that someone doesn't know how to manipulate energy or use tools yet. And the third is the combined statement that if you don't know how to manipulate energy or use tools, and you don't buy anything to teach you how to do those things, then you're practicing the law of attraction instead of witchcraft. So let's take that first statement, that you don't need to buy anything or have any tools to practice witchcraft, and talk about it. I think it is absolutely 100% possible to learn witchcraft either on your own or with others, with absolutely zero books, candles, tools, supplies, etc. I don't know if this is a hot take or not, and I know I'm speaking from a place of privilege because I have access to books and tools now, and I did when I was learning. So let's talk about the frameworks of witchcraft first, because I think that's important to understanding how I believe witchcraft works. There are several frameworks for how people view witchcraft and how they think it works, and none of them actually require any tools. Ari the Oak Witch actually has a good breakdown of the frameworks in her book, Spellcraft and Spellwork, if you're interested in reading more about it, but I'm just going to summarize them here. First, you have the spirit model. The spirit model of witchcraft says that when we perform magic, we understand that our spells are being carried out and function through the help of any spirits that we called upon during the working. It's the spirits who are able to control and influence situations on a spiritual plane that we don't have access to. And whatever those spirits do on the spiritual plane translates into change and manifestations for us here on the physical plane. Now, the energy model of witchcraft says that reality is made up of energy, and a witch can learn to sense, manipulate, control, and transform that energy toward a specific goal or purpose. Then you have the psychological model of witchcraft, and this says that the unconscious mind can be tapped into in order to create change through subliminal symbolism or altered states of consciousness. Spells and rituals performed within the psychological framework work on an unconscious level to influence yourself to make changes in your life. Now, I don't think these are the only models of witchcraft out there, but they're the three that I see most commonly online when talking with beginners and even other witches. If you'll notice, none of those models says anything about needing tools, implements, ingredients, or any physical items for them to work. It's also possible for your beliefs to fall under more than one model of witchcraft at the same time. So I'll give some examples from my own life, because I tend to view witchcraft in both the spirit model and the energy model. So I can sit quietly in my room and travel to the other world to call upon the help of a spirit familiar, land spirit, god or goddess, or other spirit that I have a relationship with or want to get to know, right? This type of communication is often done through trance, meditation, astral travel, and spirit flight. None of those methods require any objects, tools, or rituals, though you can turn them into rituals if that makes them more effective for you. The spirit you work with may require an offering from you, and that may turn out to be a physical item, but it doesn't have to be. In my experience, most spirits that I've worked with require a non-physical sacrifice, usually of my time or energy, rather than a physical item. Turning to the energy model of witchcraft, I can physically clean my house while playing music to raise energy. Then I can open the doors and windows to allow the energy that I have raised to push throughout the room and house to move the more stagnant or negative energy out of the space I'm in to cleanse it. This does require knowledge of how energy works, how to feel it, and how to move it through a space, but it doesn't require any physical tools. Yes, adding a broom and other cleaning tools can help, but they're not necessary. And you can even just use your regular broom or your vacuum. It's that simple. So with those frameworks out of the way, let's first talk about using what you already have. Now, usually when I see people saying that you don't have to spend money to be a witch, they're talking about spending extra money and saying that you don't need to spend separate money on witchcraft supplies when you already have other stuff that will work just as well. Most of us have cleaning supplies, right? We have a broom, a mop, a vacuum, whatever it is. That can also serve as your besom if you want one. Your sacred broom that you use during ritual cleansings or spell work. I tend to think that if you're already inclined to a magical life, you'll probably already have some stuff like this laying around, like candles, a lighter or matches, or even incense. If you cook at all, then you already have a fire-safe container and probably some herbs and spices in your cabinet. Those all work just as well as any implement you'll find at a local occult shop. I promise. A bay leaf from the grocery store is the same as a bay leaf from your local metaphysical store. Now, getting creative with the things you already own will absolutely help you save money or not spend any money at all while you're learning your craft and becoming a witch. There are so many other examples too. So, like if you don't have a fancy book for your grimoire or book of shadows, use a binder, a notebook, or the Notes app on your phone. I think it was Temperance Alden a few years back. She was known as Wild Woman Witchcraft on Instagram. I don't know if she's still on Instagram. I'm not, so I have no idea. But I think it was her who talked about using the Notes app on her phone for witchy information that she wanted to keep handy. She didn't carry around a notebook or a grimoire or a book of shadows. She just had information readily available at her fingertips on her phone. Now, I don't have a physical grimoire anymore because I just couldn't keep up with it. And it's just, honestly, it's not that important to me. I have a digital one, but I can't tell you the last time I updated it. Like, I have some stuff that I keep in a Notion grimoire, but I can't be bothered to update it. Everything I need to know is already within me. And since I work with the spirit and energy model anyway, there's not really a need for me to memorize correspondences and charts. Chances are we all have smartphones that have the capability of notes and note-taking, right? So use it if that's what you've got. If you need to put a sigil somewhere, grab some paper and a pen, create your sigil, and stick it wherever it needs to go, using whatever you have, like tape, glue, or staples. I remember when I was on TikTok a while ago, there was some discourse going around because a beginner witch was making a spell jar and they didn't have a candle or sealing wax to seal the jar, so they used hot glue. And there were so many people telling this person that they couldn't do that. That's not the right way to do it. You can't seal a spell jar with hot glue. But why not? It's serving the purpose, right? You're sealing the jar. That's what the candle wax or the sealing wax is for. Yeah, you can add different colored waxes or whatever to create more intention and symbolism. But the ultimate goal is to seal the jar, and hot glue works just as well. So get creative if you have to get creative. Don't worry about whether it's something that you can do or not, or something that hasn't been done before, or that's not how they did it in the past, or whatever, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that much. It works just as well. So, what if you don't have any physical tools? Let's talk about that. If you have no physical tools, then don't use anything besides yourself and work within your magical framework. Yes, if you're new to witchcraft, this is going to take a lot of practice, trial and error, and work. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to be something that will likely frustrate you, piss you off, make you disappointed, dishearten you when it doesn't work. But that's part of the process. And honestly, going through that process of being disappointed, but getting back out there and trying again can help you grow so much in your practice and really teach you a lot about yourself and grow your resiliency, right? So it's possible to learn witchcraft and how to work magic without any tools. It's just hard. So the example I mentioned earlier about working with spirits in the other world is one example of using 0 tools to get something done. It can be a lot harder for someone who has no experience, of course, and I wouldn't recommend just hopping into the other world with no protection or knowledge of what you're stepping into, but it is possible to do. Now, a more beginner-friendly version of this would be working with your local land spirits rather than jumping to the other world or the astral. You can enter a meditative state or a trance to sense their energies and communicate with them, learn more about them, understand who they are, and if they're even willing to help you or if they just want to be left alone. I had that experience when I first moved to Florida. The trees in Florida are just something else. They're gorgeous and huge, and they just have this strong energy about them that's very difficult to describe. It's very stable but very dominating, right? And so when I moved to Florida and I started introducing myself to the spirits of the land that I lived on, I got a resounding leave me the hell alone type of feeling from them because they didn't want anything to do with me. And that's totally fine. They're spirits. They have thoughts and feelings and desires just like we do, even if we can't understand them. So if you're not familiar with your local spirits or how to do it, I actually have a meditation in my book. Embracing Peace that guides you through a visualization exercise to help you identify and reach out to local land spirits. I have put that specific meditation on Insight Timer for free for anyone who wants to use it. So feel free to check the link in the description and the show notes if that meditation is something that you're interested in. Now, if we're looking at the energy model of witchcraft, that also doesn't require any tools. Again, it's going to take a lot of practice and trial and error to learn how to sense and work with energy. But it's something you can do without buying anything. Now, I think this is where creators, such as myself, do a huge disservice to beginners, especially if we're sharing knowledge and taking a more educational standpoint in our content. Now, I know I've been guilty of saying that you don't need tools to practice witchcraft, that you don't have to buy anything, and you just have to learn how to work with energy. But I don't think I've ever really explained how to do that. So for me, that's only giving a half answer to someone who's asking a question, and I think I can do better about that in the future. I'll actually go into a process later on in this episode where I talk about what I would do if I was a beginner again, but without the tools that I have now. How I would go about the process of learning how to work magic with no tools. But I mean, my point still stands, that you can learn to work with the energy of the world without making a single purchase. Tools and books are there to help you, for sure. But there are so many other resources now that we don't really need to buy anything to get started. For example, in Nat's video, she recommended the book Psychic Witch by Matt Aron. And while that's a book full of great exercises to practice working with energy, buying the book isn't always necessary. Many of us live in an area with a library. And despite popular belief, most libraries will carry books about witchcraft. You either have to know where to look, not be afraid to look, and not be afraid to ask if you can't find anything. Librarians are some of the most helpful people in the world, okay? If you have a question that you need an answer to, you can bet that your local librarian will either have the answer or be able to find it for you. So if your library doesn't have a book you're looking for, ask them about it. Another library in the area might have it. The library may be able to order it for you, or they might be able to find you something that is comparable if they can't get that specific book. You just have to utilize the resources you have at your disposal. Now, another thing that I find a lot of people struggle with, no matter how long they've been practicing, is pinpointing exactly what it is they believe and know to be true. And honestly, for myself, this is kind of why I don't really read a lot of witchcraft books anymore, at least not reading for the purpose of furthering my own practice. There is so much information out there, all from different perspectives and beliefs and religions. When you're new, it can be easy to pick up a book and adopt a set of beliefs and way of doing things because that's what this author has said, this author has credibility, and this is just what we do, right? But what happens when you pick up another book that says something completely different? Is one book wrong while the other one is right? Do you have to choose which book to follow, even if you believe some things from each book? No, of course not. The thing with witchcraft is that unless you practice within a very specific tradition that has rules and structures and core beliefs, a lot of what you believe is going to be entirely up to you. Witchcraft has a habit of stripping you down to your bones and building you back up piece by piece. Why? Because it makes us take a hard look at ourselves, who we are, and what we believe on a fundamental core level. If you don't have a solid grip on what you believe when it comes to magic and witchcraft, it's going to make it that much harder to work magic at all. Do you believe magic comes from within and you are the source of your power? If so, you absolutely wouldn't need any tools to cast a spell. Do you believe magic comes from gods and other spirits on a different plane of existence? Then you would need to believe that those spirits are real and come to know them so you can ask for their help in working magic. If you're constantly flipping back and forth between your beliefs, unsure of yourself and how you view the world, you will have a much harder time working magic successfully and learning witchcraft. All the tools in the world won't help you if you don't know what you believe and why magic works for you. We can also look at why we feel like we need tools or supplies to work magic. Now, don't get me wrong. Tools and supplies have their place in practices for sure. But again, they're not required to work successful magic. Some people might romanticize their magical practice, looking for the ethereal and mystical energy and aesthetic that candles and incense can bring to their life. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way. The energy of your space can be affected by the decorations and clutter in it, and bringing in specific tools and supplies can help you change that energy. So, do you use tools because you feel like that's what you're supposed to do? If that's the case, ask yourself why you feel like that's what you're supposed to do. Did someone teach you that? Are you self-taught and that's what you see everyone else doing? Do you have a connection to these tools that just feels right? There's no right or wrong answer here. You're just evaluating your own beliefs, and when you can look at your beliefs objectively, you can figure out if they hold truth for you or if that's just what you've been told and you didn't know there was another option. Do you use tools because they're helpful to your practice? This is likely the case for most of us. Different tools, ingredients, and supplies can lend a hand in our magical work. Candles can bring ambiance, add energy, or provide a method of activating or disposing of spell ingredients. Herbs and spices can add their energies and correspondences, and if you work with the spirit model of witchcraft, those spirits can help your magic work in the spiritual world to bring changes to the physical world. Are the tools you choose to use a crutch? This question might hit some people harder than others, and I'll even admit myself that I don't feel right doing any sort of magical working without at least one candle. It's become my go-to necessary tool, something to help me focus my energy and intention when I'm low on time or brain space. Anyone who's been around for a while knows that right now at least, I'm constantly low on energy and brain space because I work, I'm a mom, I am a partner, I am also going to nursing school, and I do all of this stuff around the cauldron in my spare time whenever I have it. And brain space is in short supply. So there's nothing wrong with using a crutch either. If you need the tool or ingredient to help you be successful, that's fine, as long as you recognize that's what's happening. Could I work without a candle? Absolutely. But with the way my life is right now, it would be much more difficult for me to focus my energy and center myself without the candle as a point of focus. So, looking at your tools objectively and evaluating why you believe you need them can help you overcome any limiting beliefs you have about the tools. You may even realize that you don't actually need the ones you think are important, and you lean more on tools that you didn't know you used as much as you do. So, now that we have all of that out of the way, let's talk about how you can learn to work magic without a single tool. We're not even going to use what you already have, okay? Because the whole point of this episode is for me to explain my thoughts and my process for why you don't actually need anything to practice witchcraft besides yourself and some time and some practice. First, there is a clarification I have to make, because obviously you'll need someone to tell you how to do this. I don't deny that having access to someone who has done this before is a vital part of learning witchcraft when you're not part of a coven or don't have a mentor or a teacher. That's why so many people turn to books and creators such as myself to learn their craft. Without someone to at least tell you what to do, you'll be stuck thinking that books, videos, podcasts, and whatever are the only way a solitary witch can learn to practice witchcraft. I recognize that. That's why I'm here to walk you through my process and how I would do this if I were starting over. First, get clear on your beliefs. Know what you know, understand what you know, and know that you won't know everything right away. This part of the process is a little complicated to talk about because there's not really a step-by-step method for learning what you believe and getting clear on your beliefs. It's going to take a lot of introspection and reflecting on what you know to be true and moving forward to analyze the belief systems that are out there and figuring out where you fit into all of that. It's going to require complete honesty with yourself. Do you believe in an afterlife? If you don't believe in an afterlife, what happens when you die? Do you believe that gods are real? Do you believe that spirits are real? Do you believe that the universe is made up of energy that we can touch and manipulate and transform to work for our own desires? Do you believe magic works through words and that words have power? So every time you cast a spell, you have to have a chant or an incantation? Do you believe that words aren't necessary and that you just need to feel things? You have to figure out where you fit into your belief system. And I wouldn't expect anyone to write all of this down, but a good way to figure out if you understand what you believe is to have a conversation with someone else about their beliefs and let them ask you questions. Ask questions back and forth, because if you can't explain what it is that you believe because you don't know how to answer the question or you're not really sure, then that is a part of your belief that you're going to want to explore further until you can explain it to yourself and to other people. The second thing that I would do after getting clear on my beliefs is to create a mindfulness or meditation practice. The purpose of this is to get good at calming your mind and focusing on a goal. It doesn't matter if you can visualize or not. It doesn't matter if you choose meditation and your meditation doesn't look like the typical sit down quietly with your legs crossed meditation. The point of this is to have the skill to center your thoughts and focus your mind. Having this skill is the first step in creating an intention that works for your spells in the future. Because if you can't center your thoughts and your focus, you may not get clear on what it is that you want, and thus that makes using your intention and infusing your intention into the energy that you work with that much more difficult. Now, creating a mindfulness or meditation practice might be harder for some people than others, and that's absolutely okay. Remember what I said earlier. Learning to practice witchcraft without any tools will take more time and more practice than if you were to use tools. It's okay if you take longer to focus your thoughts. It's okay if you get distracted easily and you have to constantly pull yourself back to the goal of what you're doing. That in itself is practice, and that means that you're doing it right. It is much more beneficial to recognize that your thoughts are wandering and, oh, you're supposed to be focusing on this thing, and then pulling your focus back in, than it is to just let your mind wander, because that's not the point of this skill. This is a foundational skill, because once you know how to focus your thoughts and your mind, you're going to be better equipped to recognize your own energy and distinguish it from the energies around you. And you will also be better equipped to craft your intention into something meaningful with the energy that you raise or use in the future so that your spell is effective. So once you're capable of stilling your focus, you then learn to expand your focus outward. You can already recognize your own energy. That's part of the process of centering your focus on learning mindfulness. And throughout that experience, you will have come to know how your energy feels, what your mind sounds like, and what physical signs you have of different situations and emotions. The next step is then to move your awareness outside of yourself, okay? Start with small objects in your home. Look at them, hold them, feel them in your hands. Close your eyes and center your focus on the object instead of yourself. Feel the energy of the item. Does it even have any energy? If it does, what does it feel like? Is it hot or cold? Is it sharp and pointy, or is it soft and plush? Is it something in between? Is it subtle and quiet, or is it loud and disconcerting? Spend a lot of time practicing this with objects in your home. If you have someone to help you, you can even set up a little game or experiment where you close your eyes and then they place an object in front of you and you have to feel the energy of the object without touching it to identify what it is. Now, it sounds far-fetched. It sounds like it's impossible, but I promise you it is entirely possible once you come to know the energies of the objects around you. And then go further. Practice feeling the energy of everything around you. Objects, plants, animals, people, places. Unless you're working magic under the psychological model, everything around us has energy that can be detected. It's hard to describe exactly how you'll know that you're feeling the energy, but this is why understanding what you believe is so important. If you don't believe energy can have a feeling, for example, then you're not going to recognize what the energy feels like because it doesn't fit your belief system. I think learning to detect the energies of the things around you is one of the longest part of the learning curve. There are so many different variables that can affect the way energies feel and affect this whole process. Your emotions, your environment, the object itself, your mental state, and so much more can affect how you sense energy or how difficult it will be for you at that point in time. Don't rush the process. Remember that you're building a foundation for the rest of your practice. If your foundation isn't stable, the rest of your practice won't be either. Now, if you're following the spirit model, the next step I would follow would be to learn how to communicate with spirits, right? This could be through prayer if you're working with gods and ancestors, or it can be through trance and meditation if you're working with other spirits. This part's a little more complicated because the spirit has to be willing to work with you and communicate with you. I don't believe that spirits are out there just waiting for orders. They're not waiting for someone to come along and give them a task or a purpose and tell them what to do. They're beings too, and they have thoughts and feelings the same as we do, even if we can't understand them or understand why. The best way to work with a spirit is to cultivate a relationship with one. So how can you do that if you are brand new and you're just starting out? Well, let me tell you what I did, okay? This is what I did when I got an aloe plant when I lived in Florida. I knew that I wanted an aloe plant to act as protector of my home. Aloe is known for their protective qualities, and they tend to be very good at keeping unwanted people and energies away when they are given that task. But I didn't want to just buy a fully grown aloe plant and tell it what to do. This was a spirit alive in their own way, and coming in and bossing someone around just isn't really the way that I do things. So instead, I purchased a small aloe plant and I started there. It wasn't fully grown, but it was established in its little pot. So I took it home and I repotted it. But in the process of repotting it, I did so much more. I sensed its energy and I began a conversation. I learned what it liked and what it didn't, where it would thrive best in my home, and how I could best take care of it on both a physical and spiritual level. And I didn't just learn these things through the process of having a conversation while I repotted the plant. It's an ongoing thing. Through caring for the plant, we developed an understanding that I was here to care for him, and in turn, it would be wonderful if he could protect my home. Now, I didn't demand it, and I was going to take care of him regardless of his choice, but we ended up working really well together. He grew very large, and he was thriving by the time we moved out of Florida. And I think my sister even still has one of the pups that came from him. And like an aloe pup it's the way they reproduce. Basically, they grow new offshoots that become new plants on their own if they're separated and repotted. But anyway, I couldn't bring him with me when I moved. So I found someone who would take good care of him, and I gave him away. And it's funny looking back on it because while I never gave him specific offerings on purpose, he would always take what he needed when he needed it, and usually that was in the form of blood because I would end up with scratches when tending to him that I would never feel, but I would notice them bleeding later when I was done doing whatever I was doing. And that didn't happen all the time, just occasionally. And it was just his way of getting what he needed. Now, after learning all of that, it's a matter of learning to build energy on your own. This energy is then used to power spells, charms, amulets, and work magic. Building energy is easy on its own, and I found the hardest part of this process is then directing that energy into something that you can use and work with. Now, there's a very popular exercise among people who teach energy work and people who are learning how to work with energy, and that's making an energy ball. I don't think I've ever explained how to do this out loud, so if this is confusing, I apologize in advance. But I recommend starting with this process of making an energy ball because it's simple and effective, and it's something you can do literally anywhere. You don't need anything special to do it at all. So first, you're going to want to gently rub your hands together to create warmth and friction. This is a form of physical energy, both the warmth and the friction, but it also translates to the unseen energy that you can feel as you form the energy ball. So you're going to do this for a few seconds, just long enough to feel your hands getting warmer. Once you can feel the warmth between your hands, you slowly start moving your palms away from each other a little at a time. I have always personally found it helpful to move my palms back and forth, so like away and then close again slowly, but not touching, until I can distinguish the energy between my palms from the warmth I created by rubbing them together. So if it helps, close your eyes while you do this, and once you can feel the energy, you move your hands around like you're shaping a ball of dough, like bread dough, and you gently condense the energy between your hands until it's taken on a ball-like shape. Now, as you do this, you might even feel some resistance from the energy as you're shaping it, the same way that you would as you're playing with Play-Doh and you're trying to move it and shape it into whatever you want it to be. You just keep trying. If you can visualize, it might help you to visualize the ball as a white glowing orb in your hands. And eventually, with enough practice, you might even come to feel the weight of the energy ball in your hands as you hold it. From here, it's a matter of using the energy, letting it dissipate, or absorbing it back into yourself. To reabsorb the energy, I like to cup my hands around the energy ball and slowly bring my hands together around it, like relaxing my own energy to open the pathway for the energy of the energy ball to flow back into me, basically, through my hands. To dissipate the energy, I like to gently pull the ball apart so it's no longer shaped, and then gently wave my hands around to release it, almost like brushing incense smoke away from your body. Now, I don't like to use my own energy for spell work, but if I were going to use this energy ball for a spell, I would hold it in my hands and use my energy to program the ball, giving it a purpose. Then I would release the energy ball out into the world to go to its intended target, or I would push the energy into an object if I was creating like a charm or a piece of jewelry or something. And there are so many other ways that you can build energy too. In my experience, Any sort of physical movement can build energy, such as dancing, cleaning, exercise, sex, even the movement of objects like a ceiling fan. I personally would practice with the energy ball first, many, many times, until that is like second nature and you can do it with ease before moving on to larger movements. So putting all this together, if I was going to cast a healing spell for my dog without any tools, I would create an energy ball with my dog sitting or laying in front of me. I would gather the energy and manipulate it to soften it, adding my intention to the ball, using my emotions, statements, and visualizations of what I want to happen. That energy gets pushed and added into the ball as you're creating it. And then I would move that energy from my hands, move the energy ball down toward my dog, pushing the energy ball gently into my dog's energy and laying my hands on her body. And ta-da! That counts as working magic and casting a spell. If I were to cast it on someone who wasn't near me, I would include the target's name and image in my mind as I put my intention into the energy ball before releasing it to go do its work. From there, mundane steps can be taken to make sure the spell has the best chances of success, which this should be done for every spell when it's possible. In this case, it would be like, feed my dog a healthy diet, ensure she has adequate exercise, take her to the vet regularly, keep up on her vaccines, etc. That kind of work can be done with any type of spell. So if you're casting a spell for abundance or prosperity, do the same thing and then release the energy ball out into the world so that it can go to an intended target to help bring you what you are wanting, to help make the change that you need to happen. And honestly, it's that simple, and it almost seems like it's too simple to work, right? But I want you to try it. Practice with it and see what happens, and see how effective you can be with just working energy and sending energy out into the world, or working with the energy around you to make a specific change happen. Because the only way you're going to get better at it is if you practice it. And the only way you're going to know if it works for you is if you do it. And not just once, but enough times so that it has a chance to work and you are given enough time to see results. Now, the last part of that group of statements that I made at the beginning of the episode was that trying to cast spells without working with energy is no longer witchcraft, it's the law of attraction. Personally, I've always been really iffy about the law of attraction in general, because for the longest time, I saw it used against people such as myself who have anxiety and who struggle to control their thoughts. We were told that our thoughts create our reality, and that if something bad happened to us, it's because we opened ourselves up to it. It was all very victim blaming at the time. And I'm not sure if it's like that anymore, but the law of attraction and I just don't get along. I don't have good experiences with it. Just as a concept, not as like a law of the universe. So the law of attraction is different from witchcraft, even when you're not working with energy in your practice. Now remember that some witches work with a more psychological model of the craft, choosing to work with their own mind rather than the energies of the world that they either don't believe exist or they just choose not to work with. One is a passive process, while the other is an active one. So the law of attraction's basic tenet is that the universe responds to your thoughts, actions, and vibration. You can raise your vibration and cultivate your thoughts, but it's then up to the universe to respond and give you what you want, and give you what you're trying to attract into your life. The universe can decide not to, no matter what you do. It is the universe's decision. You are just opening the gate, so to speak. You are making yourself open to all of these things that you want to bring into your life. Now, in the psychological model of witchcraft, you are actively working with your subconscious mind, creating symbols and sigils and using trance and meditation, creating rituals that eventually all influence your own mind on a deeper level for the sake of self-transformation and personal growth. Even if you try to work magic without understanding the way energy works or how to use it, you can still influence yourself to make changes through the rituals and intentions you set. Energy is just one method of casting spells. So while working magic without energy work may not always get you external results, it can still have an impact on your own mind, leading to internal results that have external effects. And so the law of attraction and witchcraft, though the psychological model might look similar, I still think that they are two very different things. One is a way of viewing how the world works. The other is an active process for self-transformation and personal growth that a person is actively involved in. Now, you can be active in the law of attraction, but the law of attraction is not something you practice. It is a belief that is held. And I think that's really where things differ. I don't believe in the law of attraction. I don't believe that the universe has control and will give me what I want as long as I am positive enough and open myself up to it. That's just not a belief that I hold to be true or a law that I tend to follow. However, my experiences have taught me that witchcraft and energy work and deities, those are all things that are very much real to me. And that is how the world works for me. That is how I view the universe. Now, before I end this, because this has gotten longer than I expected, I wanted to talk about the statement Nat made in her video about creators and business owners who benefit from consumption, talking about anti-consumption. And as a creator and author, I get it. It can feel really hypocritical for someone like me to sit here and tell you that you don't need books or tools when I have written books and I sell my creations, right? Many creators and authors and business owners also have their own collections of books and tools and supplies. It can feel really disingenuous to hear them say that you don't need any of that while you're looking at their carefully curated background. While I can't speak for everyone, I do want to give my perspective on this as someone who says that you don't need to buy the things while also having things of my own and selling things for others to buy. My main point with anti-consumption is less about not buying things and more about buying things with a purpose. It's so easy to just go online, buy whatever you want, wait a day or two, and have it show up at your house. Unless you actively shop with a purpose, there's no real intention or meaning behind what you're buying or where you're buying it from. Like, yes, I want you to buy my books and enjoy them. I want you to buy my creations and enjoy them. But I only want that if it will have meaning for you when you buy it and if it will serve a purpose in your life, not just because I'm selling it. For me, and a lot of other small businesses and creators, it is more of an act of service for our community than it is about making money. I understand that we live in a capitalist society. We have to have money to survive. Money makes the world go round. But what I don't have to do is make my products and services so outrageously expensive that no one can afford them and that the purpose is to make a bunch of money. It's not. Yes, I need to survive and I need to have money. But you also deserve to have things that bring your life meaning and serve a purpose, right? I think this anti-consumption movement is more about shopping with intention and being anti-capitalistic more than anything. If you're going to buy something for your practice, I think it's much better to buy from a local business owner or a small creator who, again, is there to serve their community and share their art rather than like a large big box store like Walmart or Amazon who don't really care about you. They just want your money. And I also know that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, and people don't always have much of a choice but to shop at places like Walmart or Amazon. Believe me, I live in Maine. There are some things that I just can't get anywhere else. But the point I'm trying to make is that any kind of consumption should be meaningful for you, not just because you can or because someone else tells you you have to have certain things. And whenever possible, supporting local artists and small businesses is always the best way to go. So just to recap some things, since this episode was longer than I expected, here are my main points. First, I think creators such as myself can do a better job with being more specific in our answers if we're answering questions. We can also do a better job of understanding our own beliefs and where we stand on topics, because even the comment I left on Nat's video is a little different than what I fleshed out for this episode for myself while I was creating my script. I can't expect you to understand your beliefs and where you stand on things if I don't also make it clear for myself. Get out of all of the books and off the internet more often than not. You can't experience magic with a screen in front of your face. Buy specific tools if you want to, but know that they're not necessary to learn witchcraft. Understand what you believe. It's easier to work magic when you understand your own beliefs and what you know to be true. Learn to practice witchcraft and cast spells without any tools, even if you've been practicing for a while. And finally, anti-consumption tends to be more about anti-capitalism than anything else. Buy local when you can and shop with a purpose. Thank you so much for listening in and joining me around the cauldron. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to leave a review wherever you listen to help other witches find me. You can also leave comments about the episode on Spotify and on YouTube, where the podcast will be posted as well. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast app, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and sign up for my newsletter to get a weekly email from me with new content, updates, and giveaways. And with that, I'll talk to you next time. Stay magical, my friends.